All right, so now we've got our project all set up. We're ready to start establishing our key poses for our first blocking pass, and then actually start blocking those out here in Maya. So with the key poses for the run and jump, we're looking for the key extremes or the storytelling poses for the run and jump itself. Now, as I do this, I do want to record these so that I know what poses I need to set up. And so I just have them kind of handy and readily available. So to do this, I'm just going to start by opening up a notepad. On my keyboard in the bottom left-hand corner, I'm going to tap that Windows icon. It's going to open up the Start menu, and when this pops up on my keyboard, I'm going to type in the word Note. If I type in the word Note, the top hit there or best match should be Notepad. I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And it will open up a brand new Word document, or Note document here, or Notepad. At the top, I'm going to go ahead and name this. I'm going to call it Blocking Pass 1, because again, we are doing 2 blocking passes. And then I'm going to hit Enter. And below here, I'm going to start to establish these key poses. Now, with the run and jump, a lot of those key poses end up being contacts. So most of these are going to be contacts. So again, if you kind of think about this, and I would refer back to a lot of the stuff that we did with the walk cycle, because we're going to need to keep a lot of that information in mind as we start to pose our character. So again, in the walk cycle, when we started it, we established the contacts first. So again, in this particular run and jump, most of the key extremes are going to be those contacts. We're also going to build in a couple other poses. So as we kind of go through here, let me scrub through my reference. So we get our contacts. We also want to build in an anticipation for the jump. And so that's going to be a key pose or a storytelling pose. We also are going to find the extreme in the arc. So as we go through the jump itself, we have an extreme where the body is the highest or furthest away from the ground. And so that's going to be, the apex is going to be a key extreme. A contact, so we're going to hit the ground or impact there on our heels. So that's going to be another extreme or key pose. The recoil, so just thinking about the body and as it moves, we start to catch ourselves and balance our weight through the recoil. And it's going to be the furthest that the body moves forward as we catch ourselves. And then from there on out, it's going to be mostly contacts. So we get contact, contact, and then our final resting pose. So let's go ahead and start establishing these and noting them on our document. So the first extreme is going to be the very first pose on frame 0. We need to start somewhere. So here on frame 0, let's go ahead and record that one. So blocking pass 1, frame 0. I'm going to hit Enter to go to the next line. And let's find our next extreme. So in this case, it's going to be a contact. Now, with this, so this is why we have the frame count here. Again, you do not want to guess this. You don't want to make it up. So if you use your own reference, you need to make sure that this is here so we know where these poses are. So it looks like it's going to be about frame 20. Really what I'm looking for, and again, thinking back to the walk cycle, when we built in those contacts, the forward leading leg was always up on the heel. In most walk cycles, at least. And so that's going to be our first contact when that forward leading leg heel touches the ground. So right there, frame 20. Let's go ahead and record that. I'll hit Enter to go to the next line. And let's look for our next key extreme or key pose. And so that should be the next contact. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky with my reference. So this reference I accidentally did shoot it at 30 frames per second. And I had to use After Effects to kick it down to 24 frames. And when I did that, it created sort of this ghosting effect, or it kind of messed up a little bit with the footage. And so some of these poses, it's kind of hard to tell. And I'm just going to use sort of my best judgment. And really, on my keyboard, I'm going to use the left and right directional arrow keys. And I'm going to look for the moment where it kind of looks like the back of the heel is touching the ground. And so I think on this, it's going to be frame 29. So I'm going to go ahead and use that. Let's see, the next extreme. So this is the anticipation, and it happens pretty quickly after that contact. And so I'm going to do frame 31 because that front leg is flat to the ground. And you'll notice the other leg hasn't left the ground yet. So if I kind of scrub through this. So that I guess it would technically be my left leg. It's rolling up on the ball of the toe, or the ball of the foot, and it hasn't quite left the ground yet. So I think I'm going to establish this as my, my next extreme. Let's go ahead and record that, frame 31. All right, the next one. So this is going to be the apex of the jump itself. So where is my body at? Where is it the highest through the jump? Now, as I plan this and as I start to block out this pose, I kind of imagine myself as the character rig and where that root controller would be. So it's going to be around the kind of the pelvic or hip region. And so right around in here is where that root controller would be. And really what I'm doing is I kind of imagine like a ball here or a circle. And where is that the highest at as we go through this motion or action? And I think with this, it's somewhere around frame 39 or 40. I think we could call either, but I think for this, I'm going to go ahead and do frame 39 for that apex. And then the next one should be our landing or our contact. And again, we're looking at the feet and what they're doing. And I want it when they're on the backs of their heels. So I think it's going to be, and again, it's kind of hard to tell because of the motion blur on the camera, but it's going to be, I think, 46. I'm going to go ahead and record that as my landing. The next one's going to be the recoil. And so with this, I'm really looking at the knees. I want to see how far forward the knees go. And once they reach their furthest, I guess, movement forward, I'm going to go ahead and call that my recoil. And so let's go down here. So they continue forward, 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 forward. And it's going to be somewhere right around 53, 54. I'm going to go ahead and call it frame 53. As the extreme there for the recoil. The next one, I believe, is going to be a contact. Yeah. And so it looks like frame 61, it's still on the heel. 62, it's flat. So let's go ahead and call it frame 61 for our contact. And then our next one should be another contact. So where is that at? So it's not quite touching the ground there on 75. It looks like they're on frame 76. That foot is back on the heel and touching the ground. Let's go ahead and key that in. And then we should have at least one more pose here. And I really want it to be kind of when that right foot is flat to the ground there. And it looks like it's going to be about frame 88. So that's kind of our final resting pose. All right. So we've got all of our poses blocked out for our key extremes. Let's go ahead and save this. Eventually, I'm going to come back to this, and we will add our blocking pass stage 2 to this. Usually with the blocking pass, so again, if we're thinking about the breakdowns or the in-betweens, those poses usually end up being in between these sets. So for example, we have our first key on frame 0, our second key or extreme on frame 20. More than likely, our next extreme is going to be, or not extreme, our breakdown or in-between is going to be in between those two keys, or frame 10, for example. But we'll come back to that. Let's go ahead and save this. So I'll go to File, Save As. And I'm going to save this in my project folder. So I'm just going to go to the M drive. Let's go to our run and jump. And I'm going to put this in my scenes folder. So it's wherever you're going to find it the easiest, but I'm going to go ahead and stick it in my scenes folder, and I'm going to name this, let's just call it blocking poses. And hit save. And then I'm going to continually refer back to this as we go here, as we go from frame 1 to 88. Let's go ahead and I'm going to minimize this stuff for now. There's one last thing we need to do here in our in Maya before we actually start the blocking process. One thing I would like to do is do a split camera view. So over here on the left-hand side in the tool panel, I'm going to do the split vertical view, so I get the two sides. On the left side here, I'm going to go to Panels. I'm going to go to Perspective, and I'm going to set this to the main camera. This is the camera I'm going to use to check my poses from. On the right side here, under Panels, let's go to Perspective and just go to the default perspective camera. And then this way I can judge or gauge my poses here on the left, and then freely move this camera and pose my character here on the right. And typically what I like to do is I just use the space bar and tap on the camera I want to focus on. And so if I hover my cursor over the perspective camera and tap on it, it'll focus on this, and I can come in and just set the poses. Once I've set the poses, I'll tap on the spacebar. I'll hover my cursor over the left side and tap on the spacebar again to focus on this camera, and then I'll look at it and see if my silhouette looks okay, and then fix poses from there. So let's go back. I'm going to tap and tap on the spacebar and focus just on the perspective camera for now. The other thing I want to do is, so we're going to be frequently setting keys on all of our controllers. Now, with your run and jump, there should be no controller that goes untouched. Your entire body is going through a chain reaction series of interacting with the performance that your character is going through. No controller should stay static. There should be movement on just about everything. I won't require that you animate the fingers, so I'm not going to do a whole lot of finger movement, but every other controller should probably have some animation set to it. So it would be nice if I had a shortcut that would allow me to select all the controllers at once and set a key. So let's go ahead and set up that shortcut. At the top of my viewport where it says show, I'm going to click on none. It should hide everything actually. And then let's go back to show and then turn on NURBS curves. And at this point, the only thing I can see are my controllers. Now, to reiterate, you want to make sure that your controllers for the spine are set up to FK now. Because a lot of times what they do is they create separate controllers. There's a separate set for IK and a separate set for IK. And if this isn't set to FK, none of the animation is going to get applied to the correct controller. So just make sure, double check, these are your FK, and they are. So let's go ahead, and I'm going to marquee drag. So I'm going to start here in the top left-hand corner and marquee drag and select all the controllers. With all of those selected, up at the top left corner of Maya, I'm going to go to the Create menu. At the bottom of the Create menu, there is a menu called Sets. If you hover over that, you get a sub-menu. And inside there, we want to select Quick Select Set. So I'm going to move on over and click on Quick Select Set. If I select that, it's going to open up a new dialog box. And in here, we want to name it. And so right now, it just says Set. I'm going to delete that out, and I'm going to type in S All for Select All. And then I want to add this to my custom shelf. So here where it says Add to Shelf, let's go ahead and hit Add to Shelf. And so it should create a Select All shortcut up there. And now if I deselect my controllers and then come up here and click on that button, it should select all of my controllers for me. Awesome. Now, one thing to keep in mind, so as long as you guys are working in the three labs, so BC137, AJ254, or AJ213, when you sign in, it automatically mounts your preferences to a network drive that is specific to you. And so that's why when you guys change lab settings, your Maya settings come with you. I've had some issues with this particular shortcut. The button or the icon will travel with you, so when you go to the different labs, your shortcut will be there. I've noticed sometimes when I relocate, the button doesn't work. So when I click on it, it doesn't select all of my controllers. So if for some reason that does happen to you, just right-click on the controller and delete it, or the button, and just quickly set it up again the same way. So again, that might happen. So just anticipate it and know that you might have to recreate it if for some reason it doesn't work in another lab. All right, so we've got that set up. Let's go ahead and turn our geometry back on. So I'll go back up here to Show, and I'm going to click All to turn everything back on. And now let's start establishing our poses. And so this is where I do a back and forth. One, I'll always have this up here, so my blocking poses notepad. I'll have this up in a secondary monitor usually. And so I'm going to drag this on over here to the left, my secondary monitor. And then I will also have my reference up. And so this is something I'll have in the secondary monitor, but when we look or analyze each pose as we go through, I will pull it over and just kind of discuss, what are we looking for, and then move it over to the other monitor and start creating these poses. And so I know we're starting on frame 0. Let's go to frame 0 and just take a look at what's happening. And so this is a relaxed neutral pose. And I want to start to maybe establish this. And so my arms are down to the sides, elbows are kind of bent, and again, everything's in a nice relaxed sort of pose. Knees are slightly bent. That's really about it. So pretty general pose. Let's go ahead and start establishing this. So now that I've looked at this, I'm going to pull it over to the other monitor and then start building it in. And the first thing I'm going to do for this pose on frame 0, I'm going to start by putting my arms in a more relaxed neutral position. And I'm going to start here at the top or the shoulders and rotate them down. Now, with your arms, you want to be very deliberate about how you're rotating these. We want to be very careful, and we want to make sure that we don't go beyond a 360-degree rotation in any of the axes. Because what will happen is once we switch this from blocked to in between or flat tangents, if we go beyond a 360-degree rotation, your arm will start to like kind of flip out and it'll kind of look like windmill chopping with the arm. So we want to be really careful with these. What I tend to do is when I go to each new pose, I actually zero out the shoulder controllers. I just go in, select X, Y, Z. I zero it out to default, and then I just repose the arms to help avoid going beyond 360-degree rotation. I also try to rotate it one axis at a time if I can. And so in this case, I'm going to rotate them down to their sides using just Rotate Z. So I'm going to click on the Rotate Z here in the channel box, and then I'm going to middle mouse click and drag here in the viewport to get that arm down. I'm going to do the same thing for the opposite arm. So let's grab that shoulder or upper arm controller and rotate that down in Z. And then let's start to get these in a more relaxed pose. So I'm going to reselect that arm. I'm going to take the Y-axis and pull it back for both of these. And then I want a slight bend in the elbows. Now with the elbows, I would try to only rotate these in Y. It's not really natural for your arm to do this unless it's broken. And so I'm going to try to only rotate this in Y, like so, backwards or forwards. This is also unnatural, but we might do this for overlap. So we might break the arm. But again, I'm going to try to only rotate it in Y. I'm going to rotate it forward a little bit to get a slight bend in the elbow. Let's do the same thing for the other arm. I'm going to rotate it forward slightly in Y. And then I'm going to take the wrists and I'm going to try to rotate these back in Y instead of forward. And maybe in Z, rotate it in a little bit. Again, just to get a little bit of a more relaxed pose. Now that I've rotated those elbows forward, I might be able to actually bring these arms forward a little bit. Like so. I want to put the clavicles in a more relaxed or neutral position, and so I'm going to grab the clavicle controller now. And with these, I'm going to try to do it all in rotation, so you do have the ability to translate these as well. I'm going to try to keep it all just in rotation. And so I'm going to rotate these down in Z. Just get them more relaxed, like so. I think there would be just slight rotation on the spine. So I'm going to shift select both spine controllers. Now with Max, Max only has 2 spine controllers, the kind of mid and upper spine. Some rigs will have 3. It's actually usually pretty typical to have 3. But with Max here, we just get the 2. So I'm going to take both of these and just rotate the spine forward a little bit. Now his spine and root are kind of weird. The axes are different to get the forward rotation. Usually on most rigs, the forward rotation is consistent. I'm not sure why Max is different that way, but we'll roll with it. So I think with Max, the spine is actually rotated forward in Y. Yeah, like that. So I just want a subtle amount. I don't want to go too crazy with it just yet. The hips. So this might be the one controller I don't really touch right now. So again, just thinking about the walk cycle and how we approach the hips. Anytime we were on a pass or when both legs are kind of lined up with one another, this is in a neutral position. It's not until we start to maybe build in contacts and the hips start to favor a particular leg, or when we do a pass and the hips need to lift up on that passing position, that we would maybe need to rotate this. But in a neutral pose like this, I'm just going to leave it alone. It should be okay. I would like some slight bend in the knee. Now, a lot of that in this pose is actually going to come from the root. So I'm going to grab the root and just ever so slightly pull it down in Y. Like so. So just a subtle bend, not a whole lot. The neck, I might bring forward just a hair in Y. Or actually, so this one's actually done in X. I'm sorry. Let me key that. Let me put that back to 0. Let me take the rotate X and bring the head forward just a little bit there, or the neck rather. And then if you're using Max, Max's head controller is this larger controller that kind of halos his head. So I'm going to grab that and then also rotate that forward a little bit in X. Like so. So not a whole lot there. All right, let's check our silhouette. So I'm going to hit the spacebar on my keyboard. We'll get the split view. I'll take my cursor and hover over the left side and tap again on my spacebar to focus on my main camera. And I really want to gauge the silhouette. Now, the way I like to do this is by playing with the light settings in the viewport. At the top left corner of your viewport, there is a lighting section. If you click this, and at the bottom, there's an option for Use No Lights. What that'll do is it'll turn all the shading off, and it'll completely turn all of your geometry kind of flat, black shaded. And so this way we can really gauge what the silhouette is doing without being distracted by any of the surface detail or information on that character. The one problem that I have right now, though, is the ground plane is in the way, and it's blocking or obscuring our view of the character. So this is why we have the display layer for our ground plane. I'm going to come over here and hit the V icon to toggle that off. And again, really what we're doing is we're looking for a nice, strong silhouette where most of the appendages in the body language is clear and easy to read. And I think this is actually, I did a pretty decent job here. So we can make out the head, both feet, and it looks like the arms are kind of away from the body. We have a little bit of a negative shape happening here with the right arm, which is great. So we get these nice, clear, distinct shapes. Now, I might be able to push this a little further. And so what I could do, let's say I wanted to build in that negative shape a little more for this arm. I could actually bring the upper arm back a little bit. And then I could bring the elbow forward a little bit more to get a little bit more of a negative shape there. And then on the feet, so this is one thing I forgot to do. I don't want the feet to kind of twin or mirror each other. And so I'm going to have just a slight offset in the feet. And what I would like to do is maybe grab this left foot and just pull it forward ever so slightly, like so. And when I do that, it does create just a little bit more negative space here between the legs. And again, we get a nice, clear, easy-to-read silhouette. Now, something that is really important to note here while I'm looking at the silhouette, it is completely fine to deviate from your reference. You do not have to stick to your reference 100%. If you can create a better, stronger performance and posing in your animation by deviating from your reference, please do so. The reference is just there as a starting point. You don't want to, you don't have to stick to it 100% if we could make our animation better. And so again, at this point, I am kind of deviating a little bit from my reference, but for the most part, it looks like we've got our pose in there. And so there on frame 0, I'm going to go ahead and select all my controllers using that button up there on my shelf. So let's click that button there to select all my controllers. And then on frame 0, on my keyboard, I'm going to hit S to set a key on all of those. All right, so that's pose 1. 1 down. Where is our next pose? So it looks like frame 20. Now, I am really bad. I'm probably the worst when it comes to updating my timeline. So I'm going to try to remember, but there's a good chance I might forget. A lot of times what I'll do is I'll just start setting or posing the character, but I won't update the time down here. Let's go ahead and make sure we do that. So I'm going to left click and drag and go to frame 20, since I know that's my next pose. And then let's look at our reference and determine what we need to do now on frame 20. So I'm going to go forward, frame 20. And there are really 3 key things that I'm looking at here. One, I'm looking at, since we're establishing another contact, I want to figure out what is my supporting leg. What is the leg that is trailing behind or stays behind as my supporting leg? What leg is swinging forward into the contact? And where is my root? What is my root doing? And so in this case, on frame 20, if I left click and drag, my supporting leg is my right leg. Now your supporting leg never moves forward through this movement. So that supporting leg stays planted on the ground the entire time. The only thing that leg does as it transitions here, that leg will eventually roll up on the ball of the foot. So what my contact is there on 20. So the only thing that leg is doing is it's just rolling or creating more extreme in that ball roll. I don't want to lift it up in Y yet. I don't want to push it forward in Z yet. So I know that's my supporting leg. The other leg, so in this case the left leg, it is swinging forward. So it's going to move forward in Y or in Z. And then if you look at it, so again, thinking about the walk cycle, when we created those contacts, that leg or that foot was always rolled up on the ball, or I'm sorry, the heel. And so we want to create that kind of angled position there on that heel roll. And then the root is also moving forward. And then this I cannot emphasize enough, and inevitably someone ends up doing it. But again, I cannot emphasize or repeat it enough. Do not ever, ever, at least in any of the assignments in this class, ever key and animate the Worldcon. Now, Max does not have a Worldcon, at least one that's not visible, so I don't have to worry about accidentally animating Max's Worldcon. Again, the World Controller, it's that controller that's usually at the base of your character's feet. It's usually like a large circle or a square, or maybe a four-sided arrow. Anyhow, that is usually only used to initially set the scale of your character so your character matches the scale of your scene. It's also used to initially position your character, so if it needs to be like in the corner of the room over here somewhere, you could quickly take that Worldcon and translate your character over into the corner of the room, and that's the only time you would use it in most cases. There are some instances where you might animate it, so if you had like a floating character or something like that. So I'm not saying you would never animate it, but at least in this class, for any of the assignments that we do, most likely you will never animate it. The reason being is so when you're doing something like a walk cycle and your character is moving forwards, you can always tell when someone accidentally animated the Worldcon, because what you're doing is you're counter animating the feet against the Worldcon. And it's really hard to make it not look like that character is just sliding across the ground on ice. So that's why, again, I can't emphasize enough, do not animate the Worldcon. Okay, so now that we have that established, let's go ahead and start doing our poses, or setting our poses here on frame 20. So I'm going to spacebar on over. So I'm going to hit spacebar, and then I'm going to focus on my perspective camera by hitting spacebar again. And then let's take a look at frame 20. So again, I'm just kind of looking here. The first thing I like to do, I like to pose the planted leg or the supporting leg first. So I'm going to go ahead and create that extreme there on the ball roll. And then I'm going to move the root forward. And what I do, just in terms of figuring out, how far forward should I move the root? Well, what I'm doing is I'm actually looking at the angle on the back of the leg and how much the back of the knee is bent. And I use this as a way to kind of gauge kind of that negative space around the back of the leg. I use this to kind of gauge, how far should I start to move these things forward. So I'm going to have this to the side and just kind of look at this as I set this pose. And then here on frame 20, I know, again, this right leg needs to be rolled up on the ball. So let's take that ball roll and yank that up like so. And now I'm going to take the root, and pull it forward to try to match, again, that angle there on the back of the knee. So let's go ahead and translate that forward. I'm going to have to bring it down, it looks like. So let's go ahead and pull that down a little bit. And forward, maybe down a little bit more. And I'm ignoring the left leg for now. So I'm really just focusing on this right leg. And that actually looks pretty good. Now let's go ahead and take that the left leg. And this is our swinging foot that goes forward into the contact. So let's pull it forward. And again, looking at the reference, that's where the heel is rotated up on the heel. So let's take the heel. So on Max, it's the toe heel roll. I'm going to take that and rotate that up like so. And then again, just looking at the angle of the back of the knee. So we get a pretty sharp angle there. And I want to try to build that in. And so it looks like a lot of that is mostly there. I think I could maybe push the leg forward a bit more. And it actually looks like the root needs to come down a bit more. And maybe forward a little bit. And then I'm going to take that foot. And so it's just kind of going back and forth here until we get sort of the right angles on our legs. And I think that looks pretty close to what I have here in my reference. The other thing I want to do, and this is just something I'm constantly mindful of as I'm positioning the legs. These legs have pole vectors, these little spheres here. So these you want to have in front of your character at all times. So I'm just going to yank these way out front here. What'll happen if they go behind your character like this? Your legs start to break backwards, which we do not want. So again, I'm going to pull these way out front here. Let's start to take a look at the rest of the body now. So just kind of looking at what the hips and working our way up through the spine. Our hips should be favoring the contact leg. So again, that's the left leg. We should build in a counter pose with the spine. So the right side of the spine should be going forwards to counterpose the left leg. And then it looks like overall the root and my spine are kind of rotated or bent forwards. And so I want to go ahead and start building that in. I'm going to start with the hips. I'll work my way up. So I'll grab the hip controller. And the side-to-side movement on the hip, it looks like it's going to come from the rotate Y. So let's rotate the left side here to favor that left leg, like so. The root, so I'm going to use the root here to give my upper body or the torso a little bit more of a forward-leaning angle there. And so I'm going to take this, and it looks like this is going to come from the rotate X, like so. And then I want to add maybe just a little bit more of that into the spine. So I'm going to shift select both spine controllers. And again, the spine controllers, their forward movement rotates here in Y. And so we'll just add a little bit more rotation here on the forward movement there. And then I want to build in that counter pose. So again, just thinking about the twist now in the spine. I want the spine to twist to counter pose the forward leading leg. And so if the left leg is going forward, I need the spine to rotate in, what is it, X. So I needed the right side to go forward in X, like so. All right, so that's our spine. Let's actually work our way up here through the neck and head. I think the head, or actually the neck, might come forward just a little bit more in X. And I might actually bring the head forward as well, just a little bit. Like so. The arms. Now these might be a little tricky just looking at the reference without actually scrubbing through it. And so what I want to do is I do want to left click and drag from frame 0, my previous frame, to the current one, and really look at the motion in the arms and how they're swinging. I do know, just kind of, again, based on building in a counter pose, I know the right arm should actually be going forward to counterpose the left leg, and then the left arm should be going backwards to counterpose the right leg. And so, again, if you just left click and drag through this, if I go from 0 to 20, we can actually see that happening. So as I go forward to frame 20, this arm here on the right starts to go forward, and then the left arm actually starts to go backwards. So let's build that in. So there on frame 20, we need to build in the arm coming forward, the elbow is bent, and then I also want to anticipate overlap. And so if my upper arm and forearm are going forward, I would like to break that wrist and go backwards or in the opposite direction that the arms are swinging in. And so let's build that in there on frame 20. Now again, it's up to you. I personally, a lot of times what I like to do, just to, again, avoid gimbal lock, I like to zero out my upper arm controllers like this. And just repose them. And again, just being very deliberate about it. So I'm going to grab this controller here on the right. I'm going to rotate it down in only Z. Let's do the other one now. I'm going to grab it and rotate it down only in Z. And then we need to build in those poses. And so I'm going to grab the right arm. Now you'll notice sometimes your controller will actually show you the gimbal lock. So gimbal lock happens when you have two axes overlapping one another. And so if you look at this controller now, the X and the Y, or the green and the red arcs are actually almost touching or overlapping. And if we were to rotate this to a certain point, this is when we start to get gimbal lock, when they're on top of one another. So if we do see this, I mean, it's always going to be there sort of in the background. But if you hit E on your keyboard to go back to your rotation tool, it'll disable sort of that gimbal lock preview, and it'll just go back to the normal kind of rotation. And once we have this up, again, I want to pull this forward in Y, so I'm just going to grab the Y. Now, in this case, I am going to just left-click and drag on the green or the Y arc here on the rotation tool. Now, as I'm doing that, it is on all three axes. So if you actually look here in the channel box, it is adding value to all three of these at the same time, which is fine. But again, we just want to be mindful of this, look at it, and make sure we're not going, none of these go beyond 360 degrees. And really, my arm is just going backwards and forwards. So really, these shouldn't go much beyond 180 degrees unless my hands are like way above my head. But again, just being mindful of that as I'm rotating these attributes. So I'm going to bring that forward a bit. I'm going to increase the extreme here, maybe on the elbow. Now with this, again, the elbow, I'm going to try to only rotate in Y. And then on the wrist, again, if I'm thinking about the movement of this arm, the upper and forearm is going forwards. I want to bring the wrist backwards. So let's grab that wrist. And where is that going to come from? It looks like it's going to be the Y axis. So let's grab the rotate Y and break it backwards. Again, just anticipating overlap. The other arm. So this one I'm going to bring back a bit. So I'm going to use that Y axis there and just pull it back. Again, thinking about the walk cycle, when we were building in those contacts, the arm swinging backwards, the elbow was kind of straightened out. So I'm going to straighten that out just a little bit. Again, this arm is swinging backwards, and I would like the wrist to go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to take this wrist and in the Y axis, rotate it forward to go in the opposite direction. Okay, so we got that in. Let's go ahead and do the clavicles now. Now with the clavicles, I would like them to favor whatever arm is swinging forward, or actually go in the same direction of the arm. So in this case, the right clavicle should be going forward with that arm leading forward. So let's rotate this forward in the Y axis. Oh, like so. The other shoulder, let's take it and rotate it back in the Y axis, like so. And then it looks like I'm continuing to kind of look forward with my head. Actually, we already adjusted the head. I'm just going to tweak it a little bit more though. And I think that looks good. Let's check our poses now. So I'm going to check this against my my main camera. So I'm going to hit spacebar. I'm going to hover over the left camera here and hit spacebar again. And I think we've got some work to do. The feet actually look good. The upper body and the head look good. I can't really see my arm. Now, we don't have to see the arm from every pose, but I think we could maybe have a stronger pose, at least for the right arm. I don't mind the left arm kind of disappearing behind the body as much, so I'm not too stressed about that. But with this right arm here, I do want to maybe make it a little more distinct. I'm going to see how I want to do this. I'm going to maybe rotate it back. I actually might have to bring it forward a little more. I'm going to bring it forward a little bit here in Y. I might even take the elbow up a little bit more. And that way I get a clear, distinct silhouette. I can see that arm and hand. I can see both feet and the head. Like I said, I think it's okay, at least for right now, that the other arm is kind of behind the body. I think that's all I need to do to correct that. Everything else looks good. Let's go ahead and select all those controllers. And on frame 20, let's hit S to set a key. If I were to left click and drag through my timeline now, I only have the 2 keys, but I should have blocking poses now. So it'll hold frame 0, and then once I hit 20, it goes into the next pose. Cool. All right, what's next? Frame 29, I believe, is another contact. Yes, another contact. So again, just scrubbing through here and analyzing what's happening. What is my supporting leg? What leg is swinging forward for the contact? Now, in this instance, the left leg is my supporting leg. And what is it doing? So up to frame 29, it is still on the ground or touching the ground, but again, the ball roll is more extreme. And so I need to roll that up on the ball. The right leg is swinging forward, and it's angled in on the heel. And so I need to block all that in. Now, on the left leg, I'm going to start with the planet or the supporting leg first, like I usually do. I'm going to start with the ball, and then I'm going to move the root forward until I get that kind of angle that's happening here on the back of the knee. And so I'm going to drag this on over. and then try to match that. So I'm going to space bar on over to my perspective camera. Let's see. So that's my left leg is my planted leg or my supporting leg. Let's take that and zero out the toe roll or the toe heel roll. Let's increase the toe bend. So this is where we start to bend up. Oh, I'm sorry, the ball roll rather. This is where we start to bend up on that that ball. And then I need to create that angle happening in the back of the knee. And I'm not going to get that until I take the root and pull it forward. Oh, yikes. Make sure you just get the root. I accidentally grabbed the hip too. And as I'm doing this, I'm just breaking that right leg. I'm going to ignore it. I don't care about this leg yet. So I'm just going to pull this root forward. And if I look at or analyze the reference, it looks like the root is right above the knee. And that upper part of the leg is kind of straight with the root here. And then it kind of angles back here, going from the knee down into the lower leg. And so I want to try to build that in. So it looks like that root doesn't go, way out here like this. I want it to be kind of right above the knee like so. And it looks like that angle is pretty close to my reference here, going on the back of the leg. So I think that's good. Let's go ahead and grab the other leg now. So this is our contact leg that's swinging forward. Let's go ahead and left click and drag that forward. Let's zero out the ball roll. So again, with our contacts, that forward leg should be rolled back on the heel now. And in my reference, that heel is pretty extreme, that roll there. It's pretty a steep angle there. Once I get that in place, it looks like I could maybe bring this forward a little bit more. Again, just trying to match the angle. So I'm looking at the negative space behind the leg. And I'm trying to match that angle a bit. And I've got that pulled forward. I think I could maybe push the root down a little more to get that, that angle a little closer. So I'm going to do that. And I might actually pull this leg forward a bit more. All right, and so those are my feet positions. Let's do this. Let's do the hip. So we'll work our way up the body now. I'm gonna grab that hip controller. Now again, I need this to favor whatever leg is leading forward, and so that's the right leg. I'm gonna take the rotate Y and zero it out. And then let's take that Y and have it favor that leading leg. So I'm gonna twist it and rotate it to the right. So it favors that right leg. The root, it looks like my body is leaning forward a bit more, so I'm actually going to take the root and rotate it in X further forward a little bit more. Same thing with the spine. Let's shift select both spine controllers. And that forward movement is coming from the Y, so let's rotate it forward and Y a bit more. The twisting of the spine should again counterpose the legs. So I'm going to shift select both spine controllers again. That is coming from the X. Yeah, the X. So let's take the X values and zero those out. And then let's just take the X and rotate the left side of the body forward this way. Let's continue our way up here. So let's actually just take the... looks like the neck continues forward. So I'm going to grab that neck controller. And same thing with the head and angle it slightly here in X. Let's see what the arms are doing. I don't quite know what those are doing yet. So we're on frame 29. So on frame 29, it looks like both arms are actually swinging forward. This might be an instance where I might just deviate a little bit from my reference. And I'm going to try to continue that counter pose where the arms are kind of opposite of the legs. And so I'm going to take this right arm here, and again, I'm going to zero it out. I'm going to take the left arm and zero it out. And then let's grab that shoulder controller here for the right, and let's rotate it down in just Z. Let's grab the other one and do the same thing. And then I'm going to take this arm here, and if I'm building in a counter pose, this one should be behind or swinging back from my right leg. So I'm just going to take it here in Y and pull it back just a hair. This other arm here, so again, if we're building in a counter pose, this one should be going forwards. Might add just a little bit of rotation here on the elbow, so going forwards in Y. Again, I want the wrist to go in the opposite direction of that, so I'm going to bring the wrist back a little bit here. I'm going to lessen the extreme on that. The elbow, I'm going to maybe bring back a little bit here since this arm is coming back. And again, the wrist should go in the opposite direction. So I'm going to rotate it forwards in Y. Again, just kind of building in anticipation as I go. Clavicles, same thing. So I'm going to take this clavicle here on the right-hand side, and since that arm is going back, I'm going to rotate it back here in Y. Let's take this one and rotate it forward. And then I think the twisting motion on my spine might be a little too much. I might actually tone this down just a little bit. I want it to be a little more subtle than that. All right, so we've got that in place. I think that's about everything. I do want to grab this pull vector for the knee and maybe pull it forward a little bit more. Is there anything else I want to do to this? I don't think so. Let's check our poses now. So again, I'm going to space bar over to our silhouette. And that actually looks good. Nice silhouette. Everything's clear, distinct, and easy to read. Possibly bring the right arm forward a little bit more. I think that'll be okay. All right, so I've got everything posed. Let's now I did forget to update my frame. So if you do this, which I am prone to doing, so we just set the poses for frame 29. My current time is still on frame 20. Now, if I left click and drag, I'm going to lose all these poses. It's going to snap back to what the keys are on frame 20. I don't want to lose those poses, and so what I'm going to do, instead of left clicking and dragging, I want to be very, very careful. And I'm going to middle mouse click and drag from frame 20 to frame 29. And once I've updated to frame 29, then I'm going to come up here and hit select all, my shortcut, select all those keys, or those controllers, and then hit S to set a key. Yeah. All right, let's check that. I'm going to left click and drag. We'll just scroll through here. Cool. So we've got our poses in there. Let's check our next pose. So our next pose should be the anticipation. They're on frame 31. Now, this extreme is happening right here on frame 31. Now, if you notice, both feet are still planted on the ground. Neither foot has left the ground. So the left foot, it's actually going up more on the ball of the foot. And we might treat this kind of similar to what we did with the walk cycle. And what I'll do is I will roll it up on the ball of the foot to get it kind of extreme. And I might also use the rotate X on this to help me rotate or get even more of an extreme angle on the ankle. The other foot, my right foot, is planted or completely flat to the ground. My arms are starting to kind of swing forward and out. And then if we look at the neck and head, I'm still kind of focused on the ground in front of me. And so we're going to continue that head to point forward. And then my spine is sort of straightening out. And I might use this as a moment of anticipation. I'm anticipating the jump itself or leaving the ground. And I might actually arc my back a little bit to build in that anticipation for that. So let's go ahead and start setting that up. And again, I'm going to start here with the back leg. So let's go forward to frame 31. So I'm not going to forget this time to update the frame. Let's grab our back leg here, or the left leg, and we're going to increase the amount of exaggeration on the ball roll. And then I really, really want to build in that steep angle there. And that's going to come from the rotate X on this controller. So I'm going to grab that rotate X and rotate it down. Now, as I do this, it's kind of the same problem we had with our walk cycle. If I were to go to a orthographic left view and take a look at that, it's actually rotating down below the ground plane, and I want to avoid it clipping through the ground. And so I am going to continue the exaggeration a bit more on that. And then I'm going to translate it up. So I'm going to hit W on my keyboard, and let's translate it up in Y. I don't want it to move forward. I just want it to move up. And I'm going to try my best to kind of gauge it there. I want to make sure that that tip of the foot is right there on the ground plane. It looks like the root continues forward a little bit, so I'm going to take the root and bring it forward. And again, I'm using my reference and just looking at the angle here on the back of the leg to build that in. My other foot is still planted on the ground, and it's completely flat. So let's take the right foot and zero out its toe heel roll. So that's completely flat to the ground. Also, as part of this anticipation, I want to bring the root lower. So I'm going to take this root and maybe pull it down a bit. I'm going to switch this back to my main camera. So I'm going to go to Panels, Perspective Main, and then I'm going to tap over to my other camera. Actually, it looks like they're both set to main now. Let's go ahead and make this right one perspective. There we go. Okay. The arms are swinging forward. Let's go ahead and build that in. Now with these, again, you could reset them. I'm going to try to be careful here. I'm going to maybe just try pulling them forward like this. And again, being mindful of the values over here, and we're not going beyond 180. Most of these are actually staying under 90 degrees, it looks like. The arms also swing a little bit away from the body, so I'm going to pull those out here using the Z. This one comes up maybe a little further forward than the other arm, and then again, I want to pull it out in Z. I'm going to bring the elbows up in Y a little more. And again, I want to break the wrists, thinking about overlap. I'm going to have them rotate in the opposite direction. So if these are swinging forward, maybe have these come back in Y a little bit here on both wrists. The back kind of straightens out a little bit. So I'm going to take both of these controllers and rotate them back in Y. Again, we're going to arc the back a little bit for that anticipation. And I might even just take this top one by itself and pull that back like so. Again, we need to build in the counter pose, and I think let's see, I did it on the hip. I haven't done it in the spine yet. I'll shift select both spine controllers and zero out their X. And then let's rotate these in X to favor the counter pose. So this is actually going to be the left side. So let's have it twist just ever so slightly here. And to the left. The shoulders, or the clavicles, so they should both be kind of coming forward now. And this is happening in Rotate Y. I might just reset the Rotate Y on these to make sure. So I'm going to zero those out and then just reset them up. So I'll come in here and pull that clavicle forward a little bit. Grab the other clavicle and pull it forward a little bit. My head continues to look down, so I'm going to take my head and rotate it down a little bit more. Angle it. Might even do the same with the neck. I'm just going to rotate it in X a little bit here. I'm not sure what this pull vector is doing. I'm going to pull it back up here. And I think that's every controller. Is there anything else I'm forgetting? I don't think so. Let's double check our silhouettes now. So I'm going to spacebar on over. And that actually looks pretty good. I can see all of my appendages. Everything looks great. So I think since my silhouette looks good, here on frame 31, let's select all of those controllers. On our keyboard, we'll hit S to set a key. All right, our next pose. This is the apex of our jump, and this is probably the trickiest one because our entire body leaves the ground. And so it looks like our apex is right there on frame 39. Now, one thing to keep in mind, one of the easiest ways to move your entire character, you only need 3 controllers to do this. So let me update my frame before I forget because I'm going to. Let's go to frame 39. To move an entire character rig, you just need the root and both feet controllers. So I'm going to do this real quick to demonstrate. I wouldn't recommend doing this, but if I grab the root and then shift select both feet and then use the translation, I can move this character wherever I want. And so I will end up doing that here in just a second. But what I want to do is I want to plot out the arc first to make sure I have a nice shape to my arc. So again, one of the 12 principles of animation are arcs. We want to make sure this is a natural arc. Now I'm going to do this from the side view. I'm just going to do it here so I've got my perspective camera here. With this focus, let's come up here to panels, orthographic, and let's go to our left camera. If you don't have one here, you can create one by going to new. But I've already got a left side camera. I'm going to go ahead and pop into that view. And on frame 39, what I'm going to do is come up here to the top and use the grease pencil. So if you look at the top of your viewport, there's this icon that looks like a marker. If you click on it, it's going to open up the grease pencil tool dialog box. And on frame 39, I want to create a new grease pencil frame. So here, this first icon looks like a box with a plus on it. If I click it, you can see here on the frame, it has this little blue mark underneath, indicating that we've created a frame for our grease pencil. And what I would like to do is I'm going to kind of draw or rough out my character where it's currently at. And so what I like to do is, again, I like to visualize almost like there's a sphere or a ball attached to the root. And so I'm going to draw in a circle here. I might just crudely scribble it in just by left-clicking and dragging. And I might even kind of draw out the spine here. So I'm going to do the line of action here through the spine. Might put a little dot here for the head. And I'm going to draw some crude lines here for the feet or legs. And so really the most important part here is going to be this, the root. That's what I'm going to use to kind of gauge the height of my jump and the positioning of my character. And so this might be where we could maybe exaggerate or, again, break away from our reference. A couple things I want to do is to sort of sell the performance. I really want to sell the height of the jump. And so even though I don't get that far off the ground, I might push this to be a little more extreme. Otherwise, we might run the risk of it just reading as more of like a hop or a skip. And so I want to maybe exaggerate the amount of height we get here in the air. But I also want to kind of imagine the arc. So again, if we were to maybe trace a line and the movement of the hip here, or the root area, I would want to create or establish a very similar arc. And it's going to be mostly symmetrical. And so I'm going to kind of draw that in, and it's going to be kind of crude here. Something like that. And then somewhere right here in the middle of my arc, I'm going to draw in a circle. And this is where I want my root to be. Over here, this is the end of my arc. And somewhere right around in here, this is where I want my root to be on my contact or my landing. All right, so we're on frame 39. This needs to be the apex of the jump itself. So I'm going to go to my selection tool. I just hit W on my keyboard. And I'm going to select the root, and I'm going to shift select both feet controllers. Now, if you're having a hard time selecting these, you might come up here real quick and switch back to your perspective camera and just grab them from here. And then we can go back to our camera, orthographic left. And then with all three of those controllers selected, I'm going to pull my rig forward. And again, I'm going to imagine the root kind of right there in the center of the arc. And it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm just kind of guesstimating about where I would want it. So somewhere right around in there. All right, so we've got that positioned. Let's take a look at the actual pose itself. So what are we on, 39? And I just want to look at what the leg is doing. And so we've got our right leg. The foot itself is almost in line with the root, so we could draw a line straight from the ankle up to the root of the body, or that center of mass. And then it looks like the left leg is coming forward in front of the body. I also, the right leg here, it's angled here and pointing towards the ground. The other leg is kind of flat, or it looks flat. That would be kind of boring. I want it to be a little more dynamic in terms of posing. And so I'm going to add just a little bit. I'm going to deviate from the reference and rotate that angle a little bit. My arms are continuing to swing up and away from my body at this point. And then I'm also anticipating the landing. So if you look at my head, it's pointed down. I'm looking at the ground, trying to anticipate where I'm going to land. And so we're going to build in the rest of those poses now that we've kind of established where the body's going to be in terms of this arc. I could probably close this grease pencil menu here, and let's go here to our perspective camera again. And I'm going to start to build in these poses. And so the right leg, again, like I said, the right leg should be almost in line, or the ankle should be in line with the root itself. It's going to be angled down quite a bit here and rotate X. So I'm going to create that degree of rotation there. The other leg, the left leg, should come forward and raised up a bit more. And then I shouldn't have any ball roll on this, so let's kill that. Let's go ahead and zero that out. Maybe bring this forward a little bit more. And it actually already has a bit of an angle to it, so it looks like it's already rotated in X. I might be able to rotate it just a little bit more. Let's do the hip. So I'm going to grab that hip controller and zero it out. And again, just thinking about what the hips are doing, I kind of want it to favor that leg. So this left leg is lifting up. I'm going to have it rotate up a little bit here in Z. And I'm going to have the side rotate up and favor that left leg. And then I might actually have it rotate forward just a little bit in Y. I think the spine will start to arc just a little bit more than I have. So again, we built in that anticipation where it went back. Let's actually have it continue forward now as we arc through the air. And so again, that's going to come from the rotate Y. Let's bring that forward. I'm going to take the top spine controller and bring it forward. Let's pull the neck down. So I'm going to rotate it forward in X some more. I'm going to rotate the head forward in X some more. I'm not sure how I did this, but my head, I somehow accidentally added rotation in Y and Z. I'm going to zero those out. And so we're looking at the ground and anticipating the landing. And again, it looks like my arms are swinging up and away from my body. And so I'm going to continue this upward swinging motion and away from the body. And again, as you'll notice, the rotate X, Y, and Z, none of these are really going beyond 100 degrees, either positive or negative. So again, we're just being careful there. I'm going to bring the elbows out a little bit here in Y, away from the body. And this one I might bring in just a little bit more. And again, if we're thinking about the motion, the arms are flinging up. I would like to build in overlap or anticipate overlap in the wrist. And so these I want to have come forward in Z for this, like this, to trail behind that movement going up. Clavicles, let's raise these up. And this is going to come from the rotate Z to have them rotate up. And then we'll also rotate them back a little bit here in Y. Or actually, let's make sure I have the right controller selected. Okay. So we've got all that in place. Let's check our poses. So I'm going to spacebar over. That's another silhouette I don't have to correct. Awesome. We can see all the appendages. Nice dynamic pose. Let's go ahead and on frame 39, let's select all those and hit S to set a key. And we are out of time. Friday, we will pick back up. I have the contacts to build in. So we got the landing, and then a couple contacts, and then the resting pose. And then we will move into blocking past stage.